Let us see about cookies and sessions. Fine. So why do we use cookies? If we want that certain information about the user must be stored at the user's end. So for that reason, we will use cookies, right? And that information which we are storing about the user, generally that information is related to identification of the user, right? Whenever we sign up for any new website, right? Generally, it asks us whether we want to store the username and password. The browser will ask us, right? So that is where the cookie is being formed and the identification information is stored on the client side with the help of cookies. Fine. So as you can read, cookie is a small informative file that the server will prepare, and it will embed that file on the user's computer, right? Each time the same user requests through the computer, then the cookie information is also sent with that request to the server side. With PHP also, we can create and retrieve these cookies with the help of set cookie function, and we can retrieve it with the cookie super global variable. Okay, we'll see those examples. Okay, so how do we set the cookie? We will use the set cookie function, and we will firstly have to provide the name for the cookie and the value for the cookie. For example, if I'm trying to store the login credentials, then my username will be provided as value, okay, for the name field. Okay, then how long the cookie file should reside on the user's computer, the expiry is mentioned, the path at which the cookie file is to be stored, that is mentioned, and the domain, I mean, related to what it is. Then if you are providing some security, if you are using some encryption, you have to mention that, and HTTP only information is stored into it, right? So one thing to remember, that name parameter is compulsory, and along with the name, we need to provide some value for that cookie, right? All other parameters are optional. So here's an example in which we are trying to create a cookie. One thing, whenever we are creating a cookie, we have to use the set cookie function, but that PHP script is to be written before the HTML tag. Remember this thing, okay? The set cookie function must be preceded by the HTML tag. Okay, that is why we have to write a separate PHP script tag for the set cookie function call. So what we are doing here, we are creating a cookie with a name field whose value is Arjun, and the expiry is mentioned as the current time we are accessing with the time function, plus so it is nothing but 86,400 is the total number of seconds that we have in one day, right? So into 30 means 30 days. So from current date or current time, the cookie will be valid for 30 more days. That is what we are trying to put up over here as expiry, right? And if we don't want to specify the path, we can simply put a slash so that the cookie will be accessible throughout the application. Okay. Then we will check in our PHP script. In our PHP script, we are going to check whether the cookie with such a name is created. If yes, then we are going to access the value of that cookie over here with the $_ cookie super global variable, and specifying the name of the cookie, we can access the value over here, and then we are printing it out. Fine. Otherwise it will print cookie is not set. So simple example of creating and retrieving the cookie. Yeah, as I told, the set function must appear before the HTML tag always. Then how do we modify a cookie? If we want to change some information which is already present in the cookie. So we don't have any special function for doing that. We will again use the set cookie function, and we will try to override the previously written value, right? So that is one way of doing it. Then if we want to delete the cookie, in that case, one method to do that, we will again use the set cookie function, and the expiry that we want to put will be of some past time. Understood? So here you can see an example of deleting the cookies. How we are deleting the cookie? We are putting the date, expiry date as 1 hour before. Understood? So here we are setting the cookie user, which would have been previously created, with some empty value. This is important. And the expiry is being set to 1 hour before, that is time minus 3600 seconds. Okay, that is the way to delete the cookie. Fine. So whatever cookie management you want to do, whether it is deleting, whether it is modifying, all of that has to be done before the HTML tag, before the actual web page starts. Okay. Okay, let us come to sessions now. So cookie is one way to maintain the information, but the thing is that cookie information, as I told, will always be stored on the user's computer in some file. Okay, and it is a overhead for the user to create cookie files every now and then. So another way to store the information is to use the session variables, right? We know that. So whichever information we store into session variables, that information will be accessible to us across the different pages of our website. Okay, that is how the session variables can be used. Yeah, we know that the reason to use these session variables is that HTTP protocol that we generally use to access the information is a stateless protocol. That means it is not having any memory. It is stateless, right? It cannot remember anything. So as soon as we load some another page of the same website, the information that was present on the previous page is gone. And if we want that information to be maintained, then we have to use the session variables, right? Yeah, so session variables will be solving the problem of storing any user information across different pages of a same application. Okay, and how long are the session variables maintained? By default, they are maintained until unless the user closes the browser. Understood? So until unless the user is on the using the browser, the session variables are maintained. But the scope for these session variables may be changed. Okay. Okay. Then how to establish a session or how to start a session? So we have a session underscore start method with which we can start a session on a particular website, which is designed using PHP. Okay. And whenever we want to set some session variable. Once we have started the session, obviously we will have to set certain session variables to be used across the session, right? So for that, we are going to use the dollar underscore session super global variable over here. So you can see a PHP page over here in which we have started the session. Another thing to note down here is sessions are to be started before the HTML tag always. That is why we are having a separate PHP script tag and we are starting the session over here. Fine. Once the session is started, we are trying to create a session variable over here with the session super global variable, and we are specifying the name of the session variable right over here in brackets and double quotes, and the value is specified for that session variable like this. Understood? Fine. Now once the session variable is set, wherever we want we can access the session variable with the help of same session super global variable and the name of the session variable that we created. Okay, with that we can access it. Okay, any doubt by far? Anyone? Yes. Okay. Yeah, how to get the value of session variables? Once the session variables are set and we have made a transition from, say, suppose session 1.php page to some session 2.php page, then in that case, we will again have to maintain that session by saying session underscore start. We are participating, this particular page is participating in the same session, right? So this is important. And whenever we want to access, as I told, we will use the session super global variable and mention the session variable's name. So we'll get an output for this as the value, that is abc underscore, sorry, abc at the rate gmail.com. That is what the value will be printed over here. Okay. This is how we can access the value for any already set session variable. How do we modify any session variable? So the way we modified the cookies, the same way we have to modify the session variable also, right? We have to override the session variable. Only then it will be modified. Fine. So what we are doing, again, we are resuming the session by mentioning session underscore start. And in the HTML part, we are again using a separate PHP tag. In that, again, we are using the same session super global variable, and we are mentioning the same session variable name, that is email. But the value earlier was abc@gmail.com. Now it is being modified to xyz@gmail.com. Right? This is the new email session variable that we are creating, or new value that we are putting in the same variable, right? And once we if we want to see the result, we can just run the script and we can check for the results. It will require all of this. Yeah. We are using the printr function that we already saw. Remember that printr function we saw as a function used for arrays. Now with this, it is very much evident for you all to understand that this session is nothing but a array, right? because if it is being printed with the printer function, we know printer function will print arrays in standard format, and you can see on the right hand side it is being printed in the standard format, right? Some array index email is used, associative array type obviously, and the value for that particular index or that particular key is this xyz@gmail.com. Understood? Fine. Then how do we destroy a session? So if we have to destroy a session, firstly we will have to remove all the session variables. Okay, and then we can destroy the session. Fine. So for removing the session variables, we will use session underscore unset function, and for destruction of the session we will use session underscore destroy function, right? Again, for destruction we will have to firstly participate in that session, so we are using session underscore start function, and then as a part of the script we are calling the session underscore unset function. This will remove the all the session variables, whatever session variables were created, it will empty the entire array. And then finally, when we call the session underscore destroy function, it will destroy the session. Fine. So here, let us put some information in it. We'll use we'll use the same thing so that our session has more than one session variables. Let us identify this as user. Let us keep the user as XYZ, right? So two session variables are now kept. One is email and another one is user, right? And we'll have to, we will also print out our session variables just to see. Clear? Fine. So if we execute this code, yeah. You can see on the right side the array, the session array that we were talking, it is a associative array. The first key is having the first key is email having the value this xyz@gmail.com, and the second key value pair is having key as user because we have specified user as the session variable name, and its value is xyz, right? The moment we call unset, the session variables will be completely removed, right? So if we try to print the session variable again after we have called unset function, you can see the array will be empty. Here you can see the array is empty because there is no session variable left. And finally, we have destroyed the session by calling session underscore destroy, right? So this was all about session handling